Right there. Oh, maybe that's the mom.
Yeah, she was the mom.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Matt Connarton Unleashed, the television edition here on IPMNation.com and, of course, QCEnews.com. Coming to you from the QCEnews.com studio. Glenn is making some last-minute adjustments.
Preparations.
This is a high-tech operation, Phil. So welcome to the show. To my right, of course, as not as always, but most of the time, Chris Rose.
I just kind of wander in.
And yes, Chris just wanders in. We actually just met. He wandered in off the street, and I invited him in.
It's true.
To a nice air-conditioned room, although you wouldn't be able to tell this is an air-conditioned room.
No.
And to my left is Phil Griazzo. How are you, Phil?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, and you're currently running for the New Hampshire State Senate.
I'm running for State Senate in District 20.
District 20. And right now let's see, you're in the state legislature, is that correct?
I'm a state representative, and I'm also an alderman in the city of Manchester.
Very good. Are there many of you that have a dual role in government like that, where you're kind of in two different positions? Or
there's a few of us. Some people are selectmen. Some people are on their town council. They're also state representatives in the city of Manchester. Alderman Pat Long is also a state representative. Alderman Barbara Shaw is a state representative. Alderman Tommy Katziantonis is a state representative.
Okay. And how does this work? If you win and you become senator, do you maintain your status as an alderman? Can you do that? Or
I am able to hold dual office.
Good.
Since I'm a state representative and an alderman. So the terms are offset. So their elections are every other year for those.
Okay.
So if I were to be lucky enough to be elected as District 20 senator, I would be able to keep my seat as alderman because that election would not come up until the following year.
Oh, I see. Interesting. If anyone has a question for Phil or about anything at all, feel free to, we do have Skype up. IPM Nation is our Skype ID, so you can Skype with us live here on the air. And, of course, you can text us at 603-344-6491 if you're shy. And, of course, the chat room is open, so feel free to chat with us live on the air. And what's up, Glenn?
What's the toll-free number?
Oh,
The Magic Jack.
I don't have that installed on here.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, we should have thought of that earlier. Never mind. But you can Skype with us. So, which I think is better in this high-tech era that we live in, this internet-savvy era. So, Phil, can you talk a little bit about your ideology? Because you're a Republican.
I am.
I've heard you referred to as being actually very libertarian in your views. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, classify it as any way you want. I'm a traditional Republican. Limited government, less spending, personal responsibility. If you want to label that as a libertarian view, then there's quite a few of us.
Sure. Yeah. One of the things that's let's get to this part because we were kind of talking about it before we got on the air. Now, you of course are running in the primary against John Heichel.
Well, there's not a primary yet. The filing period hasn't started. It doesn't start until June 6th, then it ends June 15th. By the end of June 15th, if there are more than two candidates on either side, that creates a primary.
Oh, okay. All right. So, assuming that John does still register within the filing period, then you've got him and potentially whoever else gets in to contend with, correct?
Anybody that wants to sign up is welcome to sign up in any race. Starting June 6th is the filing period for all state races.
Okay.
So John or anybody else could sign up for any race that they want. Seeing the things in the paper as of late, dealing with John, I think it'd probably be a smart move for John to rethink his position and trying to run in this race. The actions that happened the other day are not going to be helpful to anybody running for state races in this area because that's what they'll look at as potential a problem, and they'll probably try to hang that around everybody else's neck.
Yeah. I had initially learned about it through the Concord Monitor, what happened, this article titled Pole Dancer Ran Spurs Dressing Down. And in reading the article, I discovered apparently there's a lot of pressure on John to get out. I mean, even though, I guess technically he's not officially in until the filing period, but And there's something in here about you had held a cookout for supporters, and John showed up there to address the situation. Is that correct?
That's what made it even stranger. It was a picnic for my campaign and my supporters.
Yeah.
And John decided that he was going to join us, and not only join us, but then start to attack the females that were there in support and working on the campaign.
Interesting. Interesting. So this was is this where this incident happened, or was this after the incident and this was him showing up?
No, this was at the barbecue. The barbecue took place after the Goffstown GOP meeting.
Okay, all right. So this was so the initial incident with what is her name, Pam Manny. That
Pam Manny,
happened.
she's a former state representative from Goffstown. She's very well known, very well respected. You know, upright, outstanding individual, and for somebody to attack her with, you know, obviously such a slur.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere, by the way,
right?
It's really not called for, and that's, you know, not good representation of anybody in this district.
I was surprised by this when I saw it.
Which day was this?
It was Saturday.
Saturday, okay.
Yeah.
Which is, Matt and I actually saw him Sunday when we did the Walk Against Hunger. He was there.
Oh, I didn't see you guys. I was there.
And yeah.
Oh, I saw you. Yeah. I saw you.
Yeah.
That was a good turnout. They
Yeah,
did really good.
Incredible
Charlie Sherman
turnout.
really pulled all that together well.
Yeah,
Yes.
and we couldn't have asked for a better day for that.
Yeah. Perfect weather. It's
Absolutely.
actually almost a little too warm.
A little bit.
Yeah, was it about 85 degrees? I think
It was pretty warm.
It was pretty warm.
It was
Yeah.
in
A few of
the
us
80s.
came out a little red on that.
Yeah. So I was, and we'll leave I don't want to dwell on this. We'll leave this in a moment. And I like John personally, but I was surprised by this. And for the record, he has not denied. In fact, he says in this article, he's quoted as saying, "I said something that was stupid and inappropriate." So he has owned up to it. But he did.
I believe he's also left a message for Pam.
For Pam, which she did
with
not.
His apologies.
And she did not accept his apology, according to this. So
Yeah, voicemail always makes for a great apology.
Oh yeah.
yeah. So so I don't know, pretty interesting, and this did make national news. As far as I know, he's staying in. We had him as a guest on Gary Hopper and I did on Rock Paper Hand Grenades earlier, and apparently John's plan is to still run, but we'll see. What are Phil? We'll move on from that. What are some of the issues that you're really focused on in your campaign? I mean, we've kind of talked a little bit about things on Norm and Friends, is where I initially met you.
Norm and Friends, yeah.
Norm is a huge fan of yours,
I like Norm.
as you know, and we also had you on Rock Paper Hand Grenades. Well, let's talk about. Actually, you know what I'd like to start with is the death penalty.
Okay.
Because you have
That's a serious topic. Let's start out with
it. Is, yes.
Let's pick something light.
It's something that I'm passionate about. I'm very much opposed to the death penalty. And Chris, are you?
I'm, to be honest, I actually am pro death penalty in some cases.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Phil,
I've got liberal leanings, but there's
Sure.
some things that.
Sure.
I basically hold the same position, and I filed the bill last year that if we're going to have a death penalty in the state of New Hampshire, it needs to apply to everybody who commits a murder.
Mm-hmm.
You can't pick and choose. You can't single out a certain class of citizens and only give them justice. If it's a penalty that we believe in for those that are, you know, the worst of the worst, it needs to apply to all of the worst of the worst. If you massacre a busload of school children, you should face the same death penalty as if you shot a cop.
Yeah. Or at least two of those arrested with the Kimberly Cates murder in Mount Vernon, I think certainly should deserve the most strict punishment that we could give them. And right now in this state, it is life sentences. In fact, I believe 2 of them are getting concurrent life sentences.
Well, we did pass a bill in response to those individuals, so anybody else that commits the same crime would then fall into the death penalty phase. Again, that's my point. Are we going to continue to add classes of murder or citizens that are murdered to be able to make it fair and equitable, or does everybody's life count? If everybody's lives count, then everyone should be eligible for the death penalty. If I took your life or you took his life, what makes either of us any more special than somebody that took the life of an officer or an elected official? You took someone's life, you forfeit your own life, and that was my premise of filing the bill. I also filed an amendment to go along with the bill to repeal the death penalty altogether. So I wanted to have the full debate in the legislature that if we were going to have it, it needed to be fair and equitable to everybody, because that's what the law is all about. And if we're not going to make it fair and equitable for everybody, then we don't have it at all. And then everybody gets a life sentence. You commit a murder, we put you in a box, see you when it's time to put you in the ground.
And that's what I think is so interesting about your approach to this, that you have those concurrent concepts. Either make it fair for everyone, make it even and equitable, or just don't do it at all. And we've actually, I think we might have talked about that the day that you were on Norm and Friends, because Norm, a big complaint that he has is that why is the life of, say, a police officer or someone else serving the public, why is that individual's life regarded as more valuable than that of, say, a common citizen? Although I hate to use that term, but
every life is valuable, and that was
right.
the premise behind it. We either recognize that everyone's life is valuable, and if you took someone's life, that you don't deserve your own, or we don't have the death penalty at all, and you still don't deserve your life, but we're going to put you in a box until your life is ended.
Have you caught a lot of heat for this? Because I can see where and again, it's a unique approach to it. I can see where people on both the pro and con side of this issue might come at you. People who are pro death penalty might say, well, yes, we're pro death penalty, but we think that there should be special consideration given to someone who is a police officer, say, killed in the line of duty. And I can see where people who oppose the death penalty would say, well, we should just eliminate it. Why don't you just do that? I mean, what's been the reaction to this and your, frankly, your unique approach to this issue?
It's spurred a lot of thought, which was the impetus for filing the amendment. And I haven't taken any heat on it because everybody agrees with my position that there should be the death penalty for everyone. And if we're not going to have it for everyone, it shouldn't apply at all. But then there are a few that just don't want to lose the death penalty that we currently have. So that's why it wound up on the table, and it will eventually die there. Unfortunately, we won't actually have the debate on it.
Really? Why is that? Is it a procedural
no, there's enough people in I would say powerful positions in the state house that don't want to lose the death penalty that we have, and they're afraid that if the bill comes off the table and the amendment is presented, then the state will have no death penalty. So I think it needs to be fair or not at all, and that's really why I brought it up. What really I find interesting is in talking to people about this is the position that certain groups will take. You have people that are pro-abortion, but they're anti-death penalty. So kill the innocent, but not kill the guilty. I can't wrap my brain around that one. Everybody else is pretty much generally the same view that we've taken here. It's equal or it's not, or we keep it for certain people or we don't. But that certain group is really the one that's perplexing. They want to be able to have abortion unfettered, but kill somebody who committed murder seems unfathomable.
See, my position, and the reason I'm so opposed to the death penalty, and I think I brought this up to you on Norman Friends too, is that my concern is there are cases where we know after the fact in this country. I mean, I don't know any hard numbers offhand, but I know it's an astounding number of instances where we execute someone and then we find out after the fact that either through recanted testimony or some new DNA evidence that surfaces or whatever it may be, that either we executed the wrong person, that they weren't really guilty, or that they may not have been guilty and we're not sure. So I think it's too much of a, and I do fall into that category because I am pro-choice, but I think it's too much of a risk to take with human life to say we're going to execute someone without necessarily being 100% sure. As my friend and Chris, someone you knew, the late Stephen James Blake used to say, unless you have the eye of God, you cannot be 100% certain. So
there are times where you can be 100% certain, and Chris said it right. There are some people that deserve the death penalty, and I agree with that, and I think a good number of people would. That if you know that this is the person that has done it, or there's eyewitnesses, or there's just no way that this person didn't do it. I don't see that. I mean, I wouldn't want to be the one to make the decision. I think that decision should fall to the family. If the family believes that the death penalty should be imposed on somebody that took the life of one of their family members, I think that would be also a tweak to the process.
That's an interesting...
rather than having the state make the decision and carry out the execution. But there are some people that we know are obviously not worthy of the life that they have because they've taken so many others. And I think that those are the ones that this punishment is for. But for the ones that you mentioned, I certainly agree. There are those that fall in those circumstances where it's questionable, and those are the people that should not face a death penalty. They should be facing life in prison. But Sheila LaBar, people like that, habitual murderers. There's no way to refute that certain people have committed certain murders over a period of time.
And that was a bizarre case in itself.
That was, and for cases like that, I think are what the death penalty is really for. The worst of the worst. That's really what it's for. But we don't have that now, and it's basically a special class of people that fall into that category, and in my view, it has to be for everyone or no one at all, because that's what law is about, is creating equality and treating everybody fair and making sure that everybody gets justice, not a certain few.
Mm-hmm. What's your number one issue? I mean, what if you can? I mean, if you can narrow it down to the one thing that's the most, because as you said, this one's going to die in terms of, no pun intended, but in terms of it being tabled and whatnot, lost in the process. What's the number one issue that you're pushing for in your run for the state senate?
A better business climate in the state of New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm.
We're ranked about 47th for business climate in the United States,
which surprised me when I learned that.
And that has a lot of factors that affects a lot of what happens in New Hampshire. So since we're ranked 47th, everybody sees that once kids graduate, they leave the state to go find a great job.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have the great jobs here. We've got some good businesses, but we need to work on making it more attractive for people to come to the state that's tax-free.
Mm-hmm.
I would think that we would be third or first,
right?
But instead we're third from the bottom, and that's not acceptable. So my main focus as state senate would be to make it a more conducive business and climate, to bring quality businesses here that bring quality jobs, that pay taxes, that make it possible for us to afford the services and all the other things that we like. Without that, all the other issues, you can't pay for them, you can't enforce them, you can't do anything. So unless we can do something about our business climate, the rest of the state's always going to continue to suffer, and we're always going to be looking for ways to find more money, and we're always going to be looking for ways to keep our young folks here. The more we keep our young folks here, the more innovative our state becomes, the more successful it becomes, the more technologically advanced it becomes.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just not happening right now. So that's what I do in the city of Manchester. I look for businesses to come to the city of Manchester. I'm always approaching businesses that I see that are interested in moving, and I try to court them to get to come here. And that's what I like to do with the benefit of working in City Hall, is to try to make it. And Manchester has a business climate that's not as good as it could be either.
Sure. We hear that a lot.
We do. It needs to be more conducive to business. The more businesses that come here, again, the greater jobs are, the better the community becomes, the more things that get done, the better quality of life we all have.
Mm-hmm.
So there's businesses that have come to Manchester that I can't take credit for, but I have been part of. Market Basket came to the downtown in the center city. I was trying to get them to come fill the old Vista Foods in Ward 11. Had I known they were looking for grander plans, I would have obviously tried to get them to move to the location they're in now. But I'm glad that the mayor was able to help coordinate that, and others in the city. The other business that I tried getting up here was Trader Joe's.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to get them to come to Manchester. They're going to go to Stratham and I think Peterborough, more trendy, more it's more of a kitschy or a niche area for them, and that's their business model. So I would have loved for them to come to Manchester, but they're coming to New Hampshire. Mm-hmm. So those are just some of the things that I like to do. And other things are to try to make it more conducive for them to be able to operate here and expand and provide jobs. And once they're providing jobs, then we actually have people that are working. And the economy is a huge issue. So not only is it businesses, part of that plan is also the economy. We need to be able to make sure that the people that pay the bills can afford to pay the bills. So if you're not taking care of the taxpayer, the state's going to fall apart on that basis. Mm-hmm. So we can bring in gambling, but we've missed our window on that. That was 10 years ago. Massachusetts now has a plan for gambling. Mm-hmm. We can put in a casino, but it's not really going to have the draw it would, because Massachusetts will beat us to the punch. If we were ever, and I don't gamble, but if you want to gamble, that's fine. That's your business. That's my limited government perspective.
Sure.
Whatever you want to do in your life, as long as it doesn't affect mine or take away my rights, that's your right to do. So if you want to gamble, that's fine. But the current senator we have now, that's all that he works on, is bringing gambling to New Hampshire.
Right.
We don't need a senator who's working on bringing gambling to New Hampshire anymore. We need somebody who's trying to fix the business climate and bring businesses to New Hampshire.
Yes.
Sure.
But we need to find, I personally think that we would need to find some sort of advantage, again, over Massachusetts. Yes, we are the tax-free state, but now we're going to lose some of our residents to go down to Massachusetts to spend some of their revenue on the legalized gambling. So I think we need to also find, as well as new jobs, we need to find something that's going to bring us back to, even geographically, being on top of Massachusetts.
To clarify your position, are you saying that are you pro gambling, but you don't want to spend any time on that now because you think we've missed our window, or are you now opposed to it because you don't think it's worth it because we've missed our window.
I don't gamble, so it's whatever the people in the state want. If people are
but in terms of generating
me,
revenue and creating jobs,
generating revenue, why don't we put slot machines at the airport? That way, all the tourists that are coming and going, waiting for airplanes, can spend all the money they want.
That's a really good idea.
The airport makes a lot of money just from that.
Right.
That's a really good idea.
we have lottery, we have bingo, we have gambling everywhere already. Right. So I don't gamble. I don't care for it. I always lose. That's why I don't gamble.
Right.
But for others that want to gamble, that's their choice.
Yeah.
The problem is if let's say that we opened a casino in Salem at Rockingham Park, what does that do for the city of Manchester?
Nothing.
Who's gonna come and frequent our businesses? All the businesses will be flocking to Salem.
Right.
What about the North Country? They build one in the North Country. People just drive past Manchester. So, we're the largest city. We're the Queen City. We're the largest city in northern New England. But then we wouldn't be allowed to have a casino because there's only going to be two, one in the north and one in the south. If you're going to have, then we go back to equity. If we're going to have gambling in the state, you can't restrict it. It has to be open to anybody who wants to open a casino.
Sure.
And unfortunately, that's never going to happen because the people of New Hampshire don't support that. So I support what the people of New Hampshire support. That's what I believe is the job of being an elected official. You're there to represent. I'm not there to say, this is what I want to do, elect me, and then do something else because I got you to believe that that's what I wanted to do and then work on my own agenda. As alderman in the city of Manchester, people call me and they ask me to do things for them. That's what I do. I represent them, and I take that with me to City Hall when they say, I need to have my taxes lower, or I need more for schools, or whatever they need. That's the message that I convey for them at City Hall. And the same in the State House. People call and send emails and write letters about legislation, and those are the things they want you to work on. And the people in your neighborhood, the people in your district, what they support and what they don't support. And if you're not voting for the things that they support, or if you're voting against the things they support, you're not going to be there very long. So right. Yeah. I believe that it's definitely, you're there to be a representative, and I'm currently a state representative. I would like to be a state senator and represent my district in the Senate because I think that we're not getting the representation we deserve.
Does your perspective change at all if you then become a state senator? Obviously, it's a much smaller legislative body. In fact, the House, I believe, is it the third largest legislative body in the world? I think
it's pretty large.
House is huge.
We have 400 members, and the Senate has 24 members.
Right.
The Board of Mayor and Aldermen has 14 members plus the mayor, and that's a much better working environment.
I would think so.
It's very difficult to get 400 people to agree on anything.
Yeah.
To get 24 people in a room to sit down and talk about something and agree is difficult, but it's not as difficult as getting 400 people to come to a consensus on any issue. And that's what I'm finding difficult in the House, is that there's so many great things we can be doing, but there's the infighting, and there's there's drama, and there's chaos, and
there's Steve Valancourt
representatives to leave.
I like a more structured environment, and,
yeah.
and that's one of the reasons that I decided to take the advice of a lot of my friends and family and run for the seat, because I believe that I've been pretty effective in the House, and I believe I'd be able to be more effective in the Senate. So that's why I've decided to get in.
Forgive my ignorance. It's in the House right now is majority Republican, or is majority Democrat?
Majority Republican in the House and the Senate.
Okay.
And a Democrat in the governor's office for a couple more months.
Right.
Yeah. Can you be a little bit specific with what are some of the barriers that you see to, obviously we need to improve the business climate here. What are some of the barriers to bringing these businesses into New Hampshire? And again, this is coming from someone, from my perspective, I was surprised, like I said, when I learned how poor our ranking is as a state in terms of business climate, because you always hear about the New Hampshire advantage, and I know that that's real in some aspects. We have very low unemployment compared to the rest of the country and whatnot, but what are some of the barriers for businesses that want to come in here? What are some of the things that make them go, no, maybe not New Hampshire?
Well, there's not just one tax on businesses. There's multiple taxes. You have the business profit tax, the business enterprise tax. They had an LLC tax for a while, so you pay income tax. You pay one.
Right.
That's it. So you've got all this red tape and all these barriers that make it more difficult to open a business. And New Hampshire is largely small businesses. So when the state gets in your way of opening a small business because you have to file a paper with this organization, and you have to keep records for that organization, and you've got to file taxes with this group and file it for multiple things on your business, who wants to open a business?
Right.
that's the problem that we're having. So
Yeah.
we have such an overburdensome structure of government when it comes to business regulation and taxation that it's advantageous for people to just stay in Massachusetts or near the borders of New Hampshire.
Mhm.
And the ones that come into New Hampshire are larger companies that are able to, adapt to that because they've got a large, huge corporation, a huge corporate staff that are able to deal with all that red tape and bureaucracy.
Right.
Sure.
Small businesses, which are the people of New Hampshire, aren't prospering as much because of the state of New Hampshire.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
So you have to be a small business that can generate a lot of revenue in order to pay those taxes, as well as the rental space of the office that you're renting at the time. Seems to be a lot of red tape behind being able to be a small business owner, not just in the city but in this state. And you can tell just I've been a Manchester resident for about 5 years now, and you can tell that just how sporadic it is when you see new businesses pop up, even here on Elm Street.
Mhm.
It's so rare, or it's so rare to see a new business stay in business more than a year because they couldn't generate the type of customer business and the revenue needed to stay in that one spot.
We've seen a lot come and go. It's just right here on
Yes.
Elm Street. Yeah. Yeah.
I've been upset by some businesses that I've enjoyed
Mhm.
going to, seeing close up because of bankruptcy.
Mhm.
And it's upsetting. It's very upsetting to see that.
Well, it's very difficult to keep a small business going when you have to hire a dedicated staff to just deal with the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
When you're having to pay a salary, of $40,000-$50,000 for somebody to just deal with interactions of your business and the state,
Mm-hmm.
that takes away a lot of your profitability, and that's why these businesses go under, because they can't. The business owner, who is the owner operator, can't afford to operate and deal with all the other things that they have to deal with. They have to pay somebody to do that, accountants and lawyers and all those ancillary positions, and that makes it not feasible to stay in business for a long period of time as a small business. A larger business is able to absorb those costs. It's built in.
Sure.
They've got somebody who's already doing that for other aspects of their business, so they're able to adapt to it. Small businesses in New Hampshire suffer because of it, and that's why we see so many vacant spaces here on Elm Street.
So too many taxes, and what would you do? Would you eliminate, say, the BET, the business enterprise tax? And I mean, what would your approach be in terms of would you just get rid of these extra taxes, or?
Well, here's the thing. Why would you have an enterprise tax?
Mhm.
Because you're an enterprising individual. We're gonna take money from you.
We're gonna punish you.
We're gonna punish you for being a good entrepreneur. How about
Yeah.
we look at a business profit tax, which is what we have for income tax and state tax. That's how that works. You can't tax a business multiple times
Right.
and expect them to continue to come back for more.
Right.
You-
Yeah.
You have to be able to make it profitable for these small businesses to exist. Otherwise, they don't exist, and we don't have jobs, and then the young people leave the state, which is exactly what we have, and it's been that way for a while. And if we don't change it, we're just going to continue.
Mhm.
And I'm not a person that likes to just stay the status quo.
Sure.
I like to be able to innovate and create, think of things creatively, and find solutions and find ways out of redundancies.
Mhm.
Repeating the same thing over and over is what they call the definition of insanity, and
Mhm.
I don't believe in repeating things over and over.
Sure.
If it doesn't work the first time, you have to find another way to do it.
Right. Absolutely. Would you we're still on the air. I just got to reset that. By the way, well, it's a good moment to remind everyone, if anyone has a question for Phil or wants to comment on anything at all, you can Skype with us at IPM Nation, and also feel free to send us a text at 603-344-6491, and you can chat with us live on the air if that is your chosen mode of communication. And we have Paxton 88's in the chat room. Welcome, Paxton.
Hello.
It's actually Chris.
Oh,
It's his alter ego.
Yes, you can also get the show on your iPhone.
Oh, nice.
Yes, absolutely.
Applications.
Absolutely. Now, in terms of eliminating the BET, then would you also, I would assume, would you do some cutting in terms of the state budget, or would you assume
course.
that? Okay. And where would you cut?
You'd have to look and see what you can cut. I mean,
Yeah.
we did a lot in the past 2 years. We started out with anywhere from an $800 million to $1 billion deficit
Mhm.
left over from the previous legislature. Well, now we have a surplus. So we made a lot of hard decisions, and we didn't just pick and choose where we could cut. We basically had to cut everywhere but we did it for everyone, so it was fair. It was equal. It wasn't just, we're going to pick on this one program, and I'm sorry, but you people are going to have to suffer while the rest of them over there continue to be, fully funded and funded more than they need to be.
Right.
So we looked at everything, and we made sure that everybody that was able to be trimmed could be trimmed. So once you start messing with the business enterprise tax, you have to be able to offset that. Obviously, you have to be able to reduce the spending to accommodate for that. But if you have more people that are opening businesses, you should be able to offset a lot of that cost off the bat. There's plenty of money in government in the state that isn't needed. I mean, I'll give you a perfect example here in the city of Manchester. Our welfare department, from what I'm told, spends $750,000 a year on staff to administer $300,000 a year in benefits.
No kidding.
If you look around the rest of the state, most towns don't have a welfare department because that's the state's responsibility to provide that. So here in the city of Manchester, we're spending almost $1 million a year to facilitate a $300,000 exchange of welfare services.
That's incredible.
You look at those things on department by department basis at the state level. You can't tell me that it's not there. That you can't look and say, okay, well, we don't need 20 vans for this department.
Right.
And those are the things that I would look at as a senator, because the Senate takes a bigger microscope, or I should say, a bigger microscope to the budget than they do in the State House. The State House is actually the second group to work on the budget. All spending, no, what is it? All budgets, I think, have to originate in the Senate. So then they come over to the House, and we basically get what they've given us, and they're the ones that actually work closely with the departments to be able to get the hard numbers, the forecasts, where we're going to be at any given point of the year as far as revenues, and they base their budgets on that. And this year, we were pretty close to everything. So there's no sense in carrying a surplus if the money that you need is now.
Sure.
At the county level, we were, my committee was working on the state prisons. They wanted to carry $500,000 to the next year. Well, we needed about $1 million or so this year. I mean, about 100,000 this year. So instead of letting them carry 500,000 to the next year, that is there for just in case for surplus, whether they need it or not, everything else is already funded. So how about if we roll that back a little bit, and instead of carrying a $500,000 surplus, you carry $400,000 surplus, which is still a lot of money. But if you look at that statewide, that's where all the money is. There's money everywhere that we just need to focus a little bit closer, and we need to tighten our belt a little bit harder, and that's how you make things up. So I wouldn't necessarily be worried about getting rid of one business tax without being able to find the reduction in spending to go along with it.
Sure. What do you think are some of the things that we're doing right? Because obviously we're doing some things right here in New Hampshire, because we do have the New Hampshire advantage in terms of our unemployment rate is typically a little more than half the national average, both in good times and bad. I think we have the second or third lowest in the country right now, which is a pretty impressive thing for our state. What are some of the things that you think we do right in this state that do help us to keep a low unemployment rate and to keep our banks healthy? Our local banks here are very healthy. What do you think are some of the things that we do right that other states don't?
Well, the low unemployment rate has a lot to do with the composition of the state. We have a lot of retired people, so they're not on unemployment.
Oh, makes sense.
We have a lot of students that leave the state for jobs, so they're not looking for unemployment. We just don't have a lot of people here that are looking for unemployment. We have a lot of small business owners, so they are not unemployed. We have the lowest unemployment rate because we have very few people that have to look for jobs.
So in a sense, it's almost as though we have a low unemployment rate, but not necessarily for the best of reasons.
If people aren't moving to the state to start looking for jobs, and
so
they were in this state with a job, were laid off, and probably moved to a different state because it's an easier job market, maybe in different other states.
That makes sense.
A while ago, I put my resume out, and I tell you, I couldn't tell you how many more Massachusetts job references I was getting over New Hampshire.
No kidding,
references.
really?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
So
that's interesting.
I think that has a lot to do with our unemployment rate.
Yeah.
What we're doing right is we're getting people to come to New Hampshire. That is the New Hampshire advantage. People want to come here because we're tax-free. They can buy stuff and whatever it costs is what it costs.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to do a lot more of getting people to come and visit the state of New Hampshire. And to be able to do that, we obviously have to have reasons for them to want to come here.
Yeah. Tourism, very important, obviously.
Tourism.
This weekend's going to be a big weekend because
Mhm.
it's the opening for all the beaches. So
Mhm.
we're going to be getting that. And as somewhere predicted, I think it may have been AAA, somebody had predicted that we'll probably see an 8% increase from last year in tourism for Hampton Beach, which is exciting. But again, we're not keeping these people. They're going to be going away as soon as the weekend's over,
Right,
and then
right.
it'll be sporadic throughout the summer.
And we hope they
Sure.
spend a lot of
Yeah.
money while they're here. And
Well, we do have a lot of benefits. A lot of the people in New England like to come to New Hampshire to watch the change of seasons.
Mhm.
They like to come to the beaches. We've got all the lakes, all the rivers. I mean, obviously they're in other states, but we have a plethora of rivers and lakes and mountains that people hike on. And then we've got a lot of snow in the winter, and we've got a lot of recreational outdoor sports for skiers and snowboarders. But there's things that we can be doing to bring more people
Mhm.
to visit those. You know, the Manchester airport's very successful. We extended the runway so that we can accept international flights.
Mhm.
We need to be able to get more airlines that can offer lower fares
Yes.
to here rather than Boston. Maybe some tours. We need to think creatively. We can't
Sure.
just go through the same old thing and expect to get a different result. You've got
Right.
to come up with new ideas. We're trying to get JetBlue to come in here. The lower the airfares are to fly into Manchester as opposed to Boston, people are going to stay here. They're going to get a hotel. They're going to find something to eat. They'll rent a car. They'll stay in the state. We need to make our state more known throughout the rest of the country. And I think our Bureau of Tourism is doing the job that it's doing, but I think it could be a little better.
Mhm. Let me ask you. We'll move off of the economy for a moment. Gay marriage. They tried to repeal it in the
They
House.
tried to repeal it.
What was your vote on that?
I voted against repealing it.
Very
Again,
good. Very good.
based on equality.
Yes.
This was a right that was given to people,
Mhm.
which I don't see how you could have looked at it any other way, unless
Mhm.
we're going to start taking away the voting rights of women, or making black people sit at the back of the bus again.
Mhm.
This is an equal issue, and the government should not tell you who you should love and who you should marry. And it's not my business to tell you who you should love and who you should marry. That's not the function of government.
Mhm.
Government should let marriage be for the church.
Mhm.
If the church doesn't want to marry you, that's the church's call.
Agreed.
And I
Yeah.
completely support that. So at that point, you would then have to find a church to get married in. I'm not gay. I'm not getting married. It's not an issue for me. That has nothing to do with keeping New Hampshire above water.
Mhm. Yeah. So did you think it was a waste of time?
Well, if you
Good.
notice that the Republican majority in the House voted against it,
Yeah.
against repealing it. So I think the time has changed,
Yes.
that people understand that government should not be involved in every aspect of your life. And frankly, looking at it as a Republican, I know that there's a lot of religious connotations to this issue, and there's a lot of very, very ultra conservative people or just regular conservative people who don't agree with it.
Mhm.
But you can't have it in some circumstances and then not have it in other circumstances. So if you're a Republican and you believe government should not be involved in your life or others' lives, government should not be involved in other people's lives. You might not agree with what the other people are doing in their life, but it's not your business to tell them how
Right.
to live their life.
Right.
And that's why I'm a Republican, because I believe in small, limited government and personal freedom and responsibility. So what you do in your life is what you do. It's none of my business. As long as you're not infringing on the rights of others,
Mhm. What about
live and pursue happiness.
Absolutely.
Live free and die.
Live free
free
and
or
die.
die.
Well, live free and die. Ultimately, we all die someday.
Exactly.
I'd like to pretend we don't.
I
but-
just don't think that government should be in the business of discriminating against people.
Right. Right.
And that I see as discrimination. If somebody at
I agree.
the Goffstown GOP meeting asked me that question,
Mhm.
and they asked it in the terms of whether it was a right or a privilege, and the definition of between right and privilege, and a right is something that you have no matter what, because it's inalienable. It's one of those things that's given to you by God.
Mhm.
Okay, a privilege is what government will give to you or take away from you. So how is it government's responsibility or to give you the privilege of telling you who you can love and who you can marry? It's
Mhm.
your right to do what you do in your life or love who you love. It's not my business, and if it's not my business, it's not government's business. If it's not government's business, I couldn't vote for it.
Sure. Sure. Very
So
well
that's
said.
that's my
Yeah.
philosophy. So if people are upset with me because I voted against the repeal of gay marriage, I also voted against all the other things that they didn't like because government would have been in their lives, or for the things that got government out of their lives, or reduced the budget, lowered the spending, cut taxes. You have, it has to be across the board. I can't pick and choose.
Sure.
Just for my own conscience. I can't say, well, today we're going to work on this group of people, and yes, we're going to do this for them. But you over here, we're not so much for you. Your life and your freedoms and your liberties aren't necessarily as important. It's a blanket thing. It's you either have liberty or you don't.
Yeah, absolutely. Were people upset with you? Did you have fellow Republicans who were upset with you? And I mean, obviously the repeal failed anyway, so couldn't have been that many people who voted to repeal it. But I mean, did you take some heat for that within your own party?
The only heat that I saw was an ad in the Union Leader days later from the National Organization of Marriage listing all the Republicans that voted against the repeal, and I really odd statement at the bottom was that if you are in the district of any of these Republicans and you're a Democrat or an independent, please contact us. We'd like to help you run to defeat them. So is their strategy getting rid of the Republicans who would support them on pretty much every other issue,
right,
to replace them with Democrats and independents who will then vote against repealing gay marriage?
That seems like a backward strategy.
It was a pretty backward strategy. These guys voted against repealing gay marriage. If you're a Democrat or an independent, please let us help you be elected so that you can vote against all the other things that we don't like.
That is funny.
That is, yes.
I don't know if you have the ad.
Ultra conservative group, you think they target them, but no.
Exactly.
Look at the ad. It's
I'll have to find that.
Completely odd.
Pretty amazing.
It's like the little disclaimer at the bottom of the ad.
Yeah.
It said who they were and why they printed the ad, and that if you were a Democrat or an independent, they would help you run to defeat the Republicans.
Yeah.
Who were so good on all the other social issues. So then they would replace them with Democrats and independents who would go against every other value that the National Organization of Marriage holds. And
one of my favorite organizations.
Very
along with the Defense of Marriage Act.
Very odd strategy.
That is a very odd strategy.
Kind of a self-defeating strategy, if you ask me.
Yes, absolutely. What other? I'm trying to think. What other social issues have come up? Did you have anything in mind, Chris, that you want to ask Phil his position on? Or?
You've actually gone through quite a few that were in my head. The legalized gaming in this state, and I was somebody who thought that it could potentially be a Band-Aid fix for our economy. But you're right, we're losing our advantage now that Massachusetts has it.
But did Massachusetts did that pass there?
They passed it, and they're working on the arrangements to get them up and running.
Steve Wynn is one of the investors looking into it.
I don't know.
I did have one side question to that. Did New Hampshire lose dog racing, or doesn't appear to be any more racetracks other than our car racing up in Loudon?
I thought there was still dog racing up in Belmont.
Okay.
And I know that we don't run horses in Rockingham anymore. We just watch the races on TV. I shouldn't say we. I've never been.
Right.
So.
Seabrook was the only one that I remember because my grandparents would take me there when I was a kid to watch the dogs, and I don't even know if that one still exists anymore either.
I don't know too many people that watch dog races.
No, I don't either. We do have a comment in the chat room. MGPAC says now the fights begin as to where to put the casinos.
Oh, that's Matt. Matt is actually from Leominster, Mass. He has a good idea as what's going on.
Gotcha.
Well, see, that's a perfect example of what would happen here in New Hampshire. Where do you put the casinos? Because where you put them is very important to the other communities. So if you put it in one part of Massachusetts, the other part becomes a vacuum.
Right.
Everything leaves.
Yeah.
And now you're faced with a ghost town because everybody migrated towards the area where the casinos are. And it's not necessarily beneficial to the people around you. So again, if you're gonna have it, why can't you have it everywhere?
Interesting. Medical marijuana is another thing that Bob Kraft wants to open one across from Gillette. Now, that's interesting.
Makes sense.
Medical marijuana is another issue that I wanted to ask you about because that's come up recently in the legislature, correct?
That's come up for the past few years.
Okay, all right. And what's the current status of that? Because it keeps coming up. Does it keep getting voted down, or
no? It keeps getting voted on.
It
keeps passing.
Okay.
The problem is the governor keeps vetoing it.
All right.
And then when you go for the veto override, which, by the way, John Lynch is the most overridden governor in New Hampshire history.
No kidding.
Wow.
Well, he's vetoed so many things in the past 2 years, and we've overridden that.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that there's any other legislature, and I have to preface that with that I don't know that for fact, but
Sure.
in my 2 years, I've never seen any other governor, in my knowledge, that the time that I've been paying attention to politics, ever received so many veto overrides.
No kidding.
So
Interesting.
what happens with medical marijuana is it passes the House, it passes the Senate, the governor vetoes it, it goes back for a veto override, and the last time it lost by 2 votes.
Oh.
Currently, it's passed the Senate, it's passed the House by veto-proof majority, so if it comes back to us, we'll vote to override it. And again, it falls back to the Senate. Do we have the votes in the Senate to override the governor?
Okay.
Reading in the Concord Monitor today, they're urging the governor to not veto it. There was recently a state Supreme Court justice from New York State that is asking the federal government to rethink its position on medical marijuana because he's a medical marijuana patient. This is a judge in a state Supreme Court. There's many other arguments to be made on this, but New Hampshire used to have a medical marijuana law for about 20 years. It lasted from 1981 to 1998. Not many people know about it because it wasn't one of those big, huge, sensational things.
Yeah, I had no idea.
It was specifically for cancer patients. If you were a cancer patient and you were being treated by your doctor who said that this would help you through your treatment, you had an exemption under the law. A legislator came forward and added an amendment to that law saying that it will only be allowed if it's ever approved by the FDA. That amendment came up about a month after the FDA said it would never, ever test it. That ended the medical marijuana law in New Hampshire.
Okay.
Fast forward to today, we're working on bringing the same law back. So it's nothing new. It's nothing controversial. We're talking about taking the sick and vulnerable people in the state of New Hampshire out of the equation. And then if you want to argue and debate, whatever issue in the war on drugs or marijuana, these folks should not be part of that fight.
Right.
They're sick, they're dying, they're in their last days, and why wouldn't you want them to seek some relief and to be able to spend time with their family? Perfect example was a woman recently in I can't remember exactly what circle, but a very well-known woman. Actually, it was one of the senator's wives.
Okay.
Medical marijuana. She's a cancer patient. They dosed her up on morphine. They don't know whether she's going to make it, but she's incoherent. So for the potential last few days of her life, her family won't get to say goodbye to her. She won't get to receive the love and attention that her family would be giving her. She's basically comatose on the couch. Now, fast forward to what we've got going on now. Again, if this was a recommended thing from your doctor, I don't care what it's called. If your doctor says it's going to help you, you're going to try it, aren't you? Or at least you're going to want your family member to give it a shot because your doctor said it might help you.
Right.
It'll help you live, or at least help you to, enjoy the last few days of your life. And I think that's where we're at with it. I think we're very close to getting the numbers that we need in the Senate, regardless of the governor's veto. I would hope that the governor, since he has seen it multiple times on his desk, decides to just not sign it. He doesn't have to agree with it. Just not sign it. Let it become law on its own.
Yes.
Be done being governor, and let's all move on with more important matters.
And what does he care? He's not running for re-election.
Exactly.
He's just moving on.
I can't understand what his
Maybe
reasoning would be.
His legacy, but
well, his legacy would not be a very good one as a Democrat to deny someone pain relief recommended by their doctor for them to suffer, and his wife is a doctor. So the American Medical Association and all the other medical society and anybody that has anything to do with medicine believe that there's validity to this. The federal government even has their own medical marijuana program, something most people don't know. They grow it at the University of Mississippi, and they give it to the federal medical marijuana patients, but they tell the rest of the states they can't have their own program. Again, a special class of people in hypocrisy.
Yes.
If the federal government has their own program, why can't the states? And that's where we're at on that issue. And I would hope that in the next week or so, when the committee of conference between the House and the Senate is finished, the governor comes to the table and realizes that this is something that the people of New Hampshire support by at least about 74%.
Sure.
So why would it be any different for him to veto that than it would an important bill for him?
Yeah.
Why would you leave these people out in the cold?
Maybe he sees that slippery slope that many Americans see, that's a step forward to the decriminalization or the legalization of recreation marijuana use. Because I think there are a lot of people who get that confused too, that medical marijuana used for the benefits of treating a cancer patient and those who need it is a lot different than stopping a guy because he has an eighth of a bag of weed.
Right.
That I don't imagine that the House probably supports the decriminalization of marijuana as much as it does approve of the medical marijuana and the dispensing of. But again, it seems like many Americans can't seem to make that distinction between the two, that they see, just like with the gay marriage debate, a lot of people, a lot of conservative people, religious people see it as the slippery slope of, well, if we let a man and a man marry and a woman marry, where does it end? Could it be a man and a woman married? Can we see is polygamy going to start becoming legal? They tend to see the worst when they see these things.
Right.
But I can't see how we can deny it when you say up in the 70% of New Hampshire residents can see the benefits of supporting medical marijuana and its uses.
But see, Chris, I don't think that they look at it in terms of medical marijuana. They look at it in terms of a medication that their doctor recommended to their loved one.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we focus.
Right.
If your doctor said it's going to help you or it's going to help your loved one, why does the government have to have a role?
Right. Agreed.
The government already sanctioned this doctor to be able to help you survive.
Yeah.
For them to then come back and say, well, you can help him survive, but you can't help him with this.
Right.
Or you can't help him with that. Then what do we need the doctor for? Thomas Jefferson once said, if we let government decide what foods we eat and what medicines we take, our souls will soon be in as sorry a state as those who live under tyranny.
Interesting.
So the more you let government decide what you can eat and what you can do for medicating, they have control over your body and your mind, and at that point we're living in tyranny. So if the government already sanctioned the doctor, it's the doctor's call and the patient's call, and the doctor should not become part. The government should not become part of the doctor-patient relationship.
Right.
The government should not be involved in your healthcare choices. And again, that's a Republican principle. Government shouldn't be involved in certain aspects of your life.
Right.
Absolutely.
And that's where I have to support.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's the issue that we're looking at right now with that.
And you can take Thomas Jefferson's words and put it into modern day. The government cannot tell me which television shows I can watch. You cannot tell me which internet sites I can visit.
Mm-hmm.
There are certain things that absolutely government should stay out of. And I think on this debate, medical marijuana is one of those. I've seen studies, some legitimate, some are usually just some potheads posting online.
Oh, sure. But you're always going to have that.
Yeah.
Sure.
But if you look at the doctors who have studied it, the universities who have studied it, there is a medical benefit. Glaucoma patients have seen the benefits of it. Cancer patients have seen the benefit of it. I just hope that someday Governor Lynch or whomever's next, and it goes up against that governor, they see the benefits of it as well.
Yeah. I think too, just on a basic human level, just on in the sense of, I think that someone who opposes medical marijuana, I wonder what kind of just vacuum of compassion exists in their head where they can't see, how, I don't know how any human being can say to someone who is dying or is suffering from cancer or any other terminal illness, no, you can't have this because of whatever our hang up is about drugs or whatever.
But you can give them large amounts of morphine.
Right.
Which is an addictive.
That's pharmaceutical grade heroin.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Matt from Leominster in the chat room commented that Massachusetts decriminalized marijuana, but does not have medical marijuana, which is that's interesting.
Yeah.
We're the only state left in New England that doesn't have some change to that law.
Interesting.
Maine has it, Vermont has it, Massachusetts has it, Connecticut has it, Rhode Island has it, but we're the live free or die state. So people recognize that as a medication, the doctor should be able to do what they want. Government shouldn't be involved in your healthcare choices. The problem that we have now are hardcore prescription drugs. People have a problem with OxyContins and Vicodins and all those, heavier prescribed drugs for pain that become addictive. I don't see law enforcement out there asking to have those removed from the market. So this is something that no one's ever died from.
Exactly.
People don't rob stores for it.
Right.
We're talking about people that are dying from cancer.
Yeah.
And to tell them that they can't have it because it's harmful to them, they're dying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What's it going to do?
Right, yeah.
What's it going to do? Kill me? I'm already dying.
Right, exactly. And how do you feel about the larger issue of decriminalizing or potentially legalizing marijuana?
Well, you can't. Decriminalizing is a huge mistake.
You think so?
Well, because what happens, the whole problem that we have with this is the worst people are making the most money. You just look what's happening in Mexico. They're slaughtering people in towns.
Yeah.
Okay. We had the same issue with alcohol prohibition. The worst people were making the most money, and it was causing a huge problem in the country.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're going to have a larger discussion on the drug war in general, decriminalizing, all that does is make it profitable for the criminals.
Mm-hmm.
Because where are you going to get it? It's not legal. You as a person just aren't getting arrested. You're getting a ticket in Massachusetts now instead. But who's making the money? So I think that's an issue. What we need to look at is a bill that came through the state this year, which is tax and regulate.
Mm-hmm.
If the government taxed it, the state of New Hampshire taxed it and regulated it, they would have total control over it, and the people that made the money would be the state of New Hampshire, and all that money could go to law enforcement to fight crime. We're wasting a lot of time and money and resources on a guy that's got a joint.
Yeah.
That's a huge waste of our state resources and our police time when they can be out catching murderers, pedophiles, and rapists.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I just learned, I didn't realize until recently that, I don't know about within New Hampshire specifically, but nationally, 1 in 6 people are in prison for marijuana. And not hard drugs, marijuana, 1 in 6.
But is
it's
it the harvesting and selling of, or is it because they got caught with a joint?
Oh, I'm sure it's all of it. But
okay.
But
I think those that, the Mexican, the cartels, those who abuse the system and cause crime, cause harm against others, those are the ones that definitely belong in jail. But if you're caught with a joint at a concert,
well, but again, that's not my issue. I don't. That's not what I'm focusing on.
Right.
That's an issue that comes up. There's 400 legislators they sponsor anywhere from 1 bill each to 20 bills each. Times that by 400 people, and you've got a huge range of items that you have to vote on, whether you want to vote on them or not. So you have to take a position one way or another.
Right.
The way that I vote is whether government should be involved in your life, taxing, freedom, liberty, those important things. Everything else is, not in my focus. I'll have to vote on them, but that's not what I'm working on.
And I'm definitely with you, Phil, that as a resident of Manchester and of the state of New Hampshire, one of my biggest items that I would like to see is getting these storefronts that are empty up and down Elm Street, which is a very populated area. I'd like to see those empty storefronts become populated.
Well, Elm Street is part of Senate District 20. It's Ward 3, and
that's the ward I live in as well.
Well, I would appreciate your vote.
All right.
I would appreciate you talking to your neighbors.
Absolutely.
Because I live in Manchester, and not only work for the city of Manchester as an alderman, but as a state representative and as a Senate candidate and potential senator, I would be doing the things that I do in my neighborhood, in this neighborhood. We do whatever we can to fix up our neighborhood. So I would love to be able to help Ward 3, Center City of Manchester, to be able to improve itself, to improve its business climate, so that the only thing that right now, all we have on Elm Street really are mainly restaurants and bars.
Right.
We need to diversify, find people that want to bring other businesses in here to make it a vibrant downtown. Everything seems to be anchored around the Verizon, which is great. But if you want, when there's no show, there's no people. We need to be able to have a vibrant downtown that has a myriad of businesses that attract people to the downtown area.
Agreed.
So
absolutely. Well, Phil, this has been great. Before we wrap up, please tell our viewers and listeners where to find you online.
Okay.
We should probably have you spell your name for the spelling impaired, and let people know how they can get involved if they want to support you or contact you.
Well, my website is philgreazzo.com. That's PHILGREAZZO.com. You can reach me on my cell phone, 669-0494. I answer my phone. I answer all my emails. Feel free to contact me through the website. We have a PayPal link there. We have a volunteer list. Help us improve Ward 3, Ward 4, Ward 10, 11, and Goffstown. That's really what it's all about. I work for the people. I work for the taxpayers. I'm not there for myself. I'm not one of those egotistical, self-centered individuals that takes credit and wants to have everybody love and support me. I'm just there to do the job, and once I'm done doing the job, I'm going to go back home and ask to be left alone like everybody else.
Right.
So that's why I'm involved, because I think together we can actually make improvements, and I like to work with other groups and other people and accomplishing those things. And I think that's what's important, is getting people involved in their community and helping each other and doing the things to move us forward. Otherwise, we're all just living our own little lives and not really accomplishing anything and wondering why it doesn't get better.
Right, absolutely. Well said. Well, thank you, Phil, and Chris, as always, thank you.
Pleasure.
Phil Grazzo, running for Senate. I'm sorry, what's the ward again, or district?
It's Senate District 20.
Okay.
It's all of Goffstown, Ward 3, 4, 10, and 11. So if you
Okay.
live in any of those wards, please talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, give me a call. I'll be more than happy to meet with you.
All right, and whether you're watching this live or on demand later, or listening to the audio podcast, thanks very much for watching and or listening. Thank you to Matt from Leominster in the chat room. Thank you, Glenn from QCE News, who's in the control room, and he's about to shut us down for the night. So thanks, everybody, for joining us on tonight's edition of Matt Connarton Unleashed, the television edition. And be sure to tune in Friday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, for Willette at Large Gone Global. I'll be there. Chris will be there. Glenn R.J. Willette will be there, hence the name Willette. And I understand, Phil, you're going to be coming on soon. Are you coming on this Friday, or has Glenn booked you yet?
Glenn and I haven't booked something. I'll be back.
Okay, all right. You'll see Phil
Every Friday, 8 p.m. You're
You'll-
always invited.
Yes, absolutely.
And I spilt.
You'll see Phil again soon. Chris is making a mess, so it's
I am.
definitely time to go. He's wrecking the place. That's
Got a drinking problem.
that's what. Yes, apparently it's all over your shorts. It's
I know.
terrible. All right, Glenn, you can wrap it up in there. Thanks, everybody, and we'll talk at you again soon. Thank you, Phil.
Well, pleasure meeting you.
Fun stuff.